We're going to look at something here that's very, very concerning to me, and I believe it probably will be very concerning to other people too as well, especially those up in the New York City area. It should be cut and dry that the American people have been backstabbed, have been set up, used, violated by some of our allies, and one of those allies is Saudi Arabia. What you're fixing to see is counterproductive in the fact that we know that the Saudis masterminded 9/11. But yet now, our government, working through our military defense system, is going to go back and supplying them weapons. We'd already cut them off pertaining to the things that they was doing to Yemen a few years ago. And to think that these people are that slick and sly that they can take their money and basically weaponize it to the degree that we still bend over and kiss the ring from their hand, it's got to either be absolute stupidity that reaches on a level of high treason, or maybe there's something else to it that I don't fully understand, and maybe that could be possibly they're sabotaging the weapons to where they're not going to be near as effective, or there's some sort of a game plan and behind all this towards not wanting to stir up one of their nest eggs to the degree that that we're not going to be able to stand forcefully against what that they have done. I don't know what it is, but please listen, because it was very disheartening whenever I heard it a while ago. Please watch.
Look at some of the other stories making headlines. There's a lot happening overseas. It's not yet clear what caused a passenger plane to crash in Brazil on Friday, although there is some suspicion that a buildup of ice may have played a role. The bodies of all 62 victims and the black box recorder have been recovered from the scene. Family members of those affected are gathering in Sao Paulo as they await official answers from authorities. U.S.-made weapons will begin flowing again to...
Now, wasn't that a coincidence that all of a sudden electricity went off? She was just fixing to say U.S. weapons are fixing to start flowing again to Saudi Arabia. And why that done that, I don't have a clue. That was not coincident. That was an intentional act towards not wanting to verify the things that I'm talking about right now pertaining to America. It won't go back to where it was. In other words, now it's over with. You can look it up on MSNBC of what she was talking about a while ago, one of the commentators, regarding the American, I guess, defense system has decided to start selling Saudi Arabia back weapons again. I have never seen a country that is acting so blindly as I have pertaining to the American government. And throw the equation of religion completely out the door, between God and the devil, or good and evil. But it goes back to the integrity of the American people towards what is right versus what is not right. And whenever we know that those people over there took a part in 9/11 and we're still not acting up onto it, tells me that either America is scared in pursuing true justice? Or we have had such of a shift in government policies regarding our enemies that now we reward our enemies versus penalizing them. I've never seen nothing like this before. But you know what? I'm not running the government. I'm not running the defense system. The only thing that I can do is make my little videos and tell my stories and tell my testimonies of the things that I know. And if people believe it and want to act upon it, that'll be fine. And if they don't, that'll be fine too. Because at this point in time, my hands is tied. My hands has been tied for the past 30 plus years. And certain people in America wanted to make sure that the Windmill Ministries missions was basically shot out of the gate before it ever got out of the gate good, or shot off the horse before it ever got out of the gate good. There's nothing I can do pertaining to right and wrong, pertaining to the things that I believed at one time that our government stood for, pertaining to justice and fairness and righteousness, and you know, if you're our true adversary that stands with us and for us, and there's no question about that, then that should be ironclad pertaining to our supporters, our allies. But I've actually seen America stumbling, pertaining to our government, about supporting the things over in Jerusalem. And now I'm hearing where now America, our government, is going to go back to stockpiling weapons to Saudi Arabia. Talk about mixed messages. You don't get much any confusing than that.
What worked for him in 2016, most of his workers, most of his contributors, donors.
Finally come back on. But the whole thing went out. Electricity went out just for a split
Middle
second.
East waters. There is a lot to unpack here. We've got Nick Robertson in Tel Aviv for you today. Ben Wiedemann is in Beirut. Natasha Bertrand is at the Pentagon in Washington. And let's start with you. We've seen Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary, posting today on X, reiterating to Yoav Gallant, the Defense Secretary in Israel, that the US is committed to Israel's defense. This, as concerns continue amidst much sort of speculation about whether Iran and Hezbollah may attack Israel, and if so, when. What are the circumstances of a US sub moving into the region? And how unusual is it to reveal a location like this? This is what we're getting from the US Secretary of Defense, of course, at this point.
Well, that's the key, Becky, is that it is extremely rare for the U.S. to reveal the location or the deployment of a nuclear-powered guided missile submarine. Usually these operate in complete secrecy. And so the fact that they are telegraphing to the world, and specifically, of course, to Iran and its proxies, that this submarine is moving into the area is a really clear sign here that the U.S. and Israel are very concerned that Iran and/or Hezbollah and the proxy militias, of course, in Iraq and Syria may be poised to carry out some kind of coordinated or large-scale attack on Israel. And of course...
But once more, why would we want to announce it for? Why would we want to announce it for? Because we know that they are, Iran and Iraq, that area over there, basically all of them, other than Jerusalem, that is iron platinum pertaining to our allies. Why would we want to announce that? Is it to explain to them that you are on the precipices of all out and out disaster if you do something like that, I don't know. I don't know what their motive is towards wanting to announce that submarine being over there. Because ordinarily, they don't advertise to their enemies what's coming abroad. And I'm telling you right now, I smell something fishy whenever it comes to the American government that has made a decision towards now wanting to go back in supplying Saudi Arabia with bombs. Saudi Arabia is lying out their teeth whenever they say that they are for Israel regarding the Lord Jesus Christ. They have been opposed to Christianity for hundreds of years. We know that they are very evil, brutal people. Why would a government even gesture the fact that these people have made a turnaround, and they're not doing it because of their loyalty in their God, pertaining to Allah? They're doing it for favors, worldly favors of trying to show dominance through a dominant ally, which is supposed to be America. And if our American officials can't see that and understand that, either A, they don't want to see it, or B, they have been bamboozled all the way to the Pentagon by one of their enriching enemies that is pretending to be an ally.
Attack on Israel and, of course, on the many U.S. forces that remain in the region. And so what we're seeing now, of course, is the U.S. continuing to place all of these very strategic assets in the region to prepare for the possibility that this happens. And all of this was announced last night following Secretary Austin's call with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. He has also, according to that readout there, ordered the speeding up the acceleration of the transit of that carrier strike group, the USS Lincoln, to the region, which is going to be replacing the Roosevelt, which is an aircraft carrier that has currently been operating kind of in the Gulf of Oman area. Also indicating, of course, that this needs to get there quickly because they are anticipating something possibly happening within the next few days here. And this is not only a message of deterrence, of course, saying, look, we have all of this hardware, all of these troops in this region in case you do try something, but it's also, of course, a message of, hey, we're here, we're ready to defend Israel if need be. And look what happened last time when Iran attacked Israel. Most of those 300 plus ballistic missiles and drones were ultimately shot down by the US and its allies. And so preparing for the worst here, but of course still hoping that diplomacy is going to win the day.
Okay, the region extremely tense at this point. Thank you. Let me bring in Nick. The US, Egypt and Qatar appealing for talks on a ceasefire and hostage deal to begin again on August the 15th. That is this Thursday. The hopes were that that would at least in principle postpone any threatened action by Iran on one hand and Hezbollah from Lebanon on the other. And yet, it does seem that there are real concerns that there is an attack could be imminent at any time. So firstly, what do we know about these ceasefire hostage talks Thursday? Who's attending, who's not? And secondly, what chance in region, in Israel, talking to sources there, what chance that there will be some sort of retaliatory attack by Iran and Hezbollah before those talks on Thursday, if indeed they happen?
Yeah, they're very crucial talks, as you say, Becky, and it is important that the mood music in advance of those talks is positive. A, to make the talks happen, B, to deter Iran, because as you rightly say, it was these talks being brought into being that was going to offer Iran a potential off-ramp from striking back at Israel for the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran just about a week and a half ago. So where do things stand? Well, we know that Hamas late yesterday had signaled that they wanted a deal based on President Biden's framework that he had laid out, that had essentially fallen by the wayside previously because of what Hamas and others have described as additional measures put in place, additional requests at those negotiations by the Israeli side, by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So the question, talking to sources at the moment, is what sort of pressure is the United States putting on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to take a more moderate position on the talks, and therefore what's the assessment that he will? And I think in the last few minutes we've really got an understanding of where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's mind is on this, and that's because of an internal dispute in Israel between the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and the Prime Minister's office. Now, Yoav Gallant was quoted in some Israeli media again repeating a line he said before, that there is no absolute victory over Hamas. People who believe that are mistaken, and that's been the Prime Minister's message about Gaza. Now, the Prime Minister's office responded to that just a few minutes ago, saying that Yoav Gallant should focus on criticizing Hamas.
Then that means the Bible is a liar. And I'm not calling the Bible a liar. But what I'm saying is, if there's absolutely no hope for them to defeat their enemy, pertaining to the meek inheriting the earth, then that means that they are going to bow down to their enemy in allowing for their enemy to basically get away with what their enemy done. I've never seen such entanglement of what is happening. And you know, the Western world really and truly has a great deal to do with these false images that has been put forth in people's minds for years and years and years. I guess ever since the Vietnam War, that we wanted to take reality out of reality in thinking that war was not such of a horrible bad thing. Just like our election leaders for the past 30 plus years, their interest at heart has not been primarily for the American people. Because if it hadn't, first of all, we wouldn't have allowed for all these retail stores to have done what they've done. Secondly, we wouldn't be $35+ trillion in debt. And thirdly, we wouldn't be allowing for all the illegals to come over the border the way that they have for the past, I guess, 7, 8, 10 years, such of an inflow of all this. Something has happened from within the fundamental values of our original estate pertaining to the American people's will. Whenever it comes to standing up for true, authentic, righteous justice. And whenever this happens, in which it looks like it is, then we are setting ourselves up for a fall, no matter how many nuclear warheads that we may have, regardless whether they be in the Pacific or the Atlantic or down towards the Middle East or over in the Black Sea or over in the China Sea. We are setting ourselves up for a fall because now we are devaluating what our original principles stood for, going back to our original designers. We're devaluating that. And whenever we devaluate that, then is whenever our enemies start saying, now we see a crack. Now we see a breach. Now we see a possibility that our way is the better way versus the democracy way. And whenever that occurs, you can pretty well bet that we have been taken over from the inside out towards now being more appealed by the global standards than we are our own. Being more appealed or influenced by the global standards than we are our own. You keep in mind, it was our politicians that started selling the farm, giving the farm away, that has put us where we are today. How come our government, instead of it becoming more stiff-necked, how come it's still wanting to kiss the hand of the ring pertaining to the devil over in the Middle East? We're either scared or we don't feel like that we got the proper punkin to stand up against our adversaries. And to be quite honest with you, either or, it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening to see our civil defense in how lax that it has become, especially since the ending of the Cold War. And I've said that all along, and I'll continue to say that. And actually, I'm going to broaden that towards just going from Homeland Security, starting with Secret Service, pertaining to our government becoming too lax. But I'm going to go as far as saying that it's the people within the government that has become too lax. Because whenever the people become that lax, to the point that any and everything goes, then you start devaluating your value of what your ancestors was willing to sacrifice and bleed and die for, pertaining to their policies, their original stance, and what they stood for. And once you cross that line, then you no longer have the protection of the Holy Father on your side. And once you cross that line, then you're setting yourself up for a fall. And that fall can come in the form of all our schools being disarray towards not being able to teach your children right, of being basically all these kids that's basically dysfunctional pertaining to illiteracy. It can come in the form of all the girls practicing sex the way that they do, pertaining to open abortions. It can come in the form of disease. It can come in the form of all the divorces. It can come in the form of our churches being torn apart over here in America. It can come in the form of being $35 trillion in debt. It can come in the form of seeing all the illegals basically invading our great land that once more people like David Crockett stood up against regarding our original policies. Whenever you start backsliding in your degree as far as devaluating the original stance of which we took, going all the way back to basically the Revolutionary War over here in America. Whenever you start backsliding all that, now you start walking away from the umbrella of protection that at one time used to protect America that possibly may not. You know, all these farmers around here in this particular area, I can't vouch for everywhere because I'm not in tune with all the agriculture communities all over the countryside. But right here in this particular area, I've actually heard some farmers complaining about too much rain this year. Too much rain. I had one of them explain it to me. Well, you know, you can get too much water to the degree that the plant won't come up because it's submerged under the water and it kills the plant as the plant's coming out of the ground. Well, I understand that. I'm not that backwoods to the point of me understanding about the farming community, because we used to farm over 500 acres before things went sour in the early 80s on our own plantation, if you want to call it a plantation. I don't call it a plantation. I call it a non-plantation pertaining to our farming estates here in Northwest Tennessee. So I'm familiar with what it takes to make stuff grow. It takes sunlight, takes water, etc. But whenever you have people that's complaining about too much water, knowing that some of these farmers out here are going to make in their corn somewhere between 250 and 300 bushel to the acre, and some may even get more than 300 bushel to the acre, you know good and well that the Heavenly Father has blessed the farming community in these areas towards them being able to reap that type of yield. I realize that corn right now ain't but about $10 a bushel. But if you get 300 bushel to the acre at $10 a bushel, how much did you get off of that acre? You do the math. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out how much money they're going to be making per acre. Some of these farmers farm 4, 5, 6,000 acres per farm, per family. It's a business. It's a enterprise. But yet now, whenever they do have a strong year, like they're going to have this year in this particular area, do we see the farming community? Do we see them doing stuff for the community? Do we see them giving more to charitable institutions? Do we see them putting more into the ante pertaining to helping people overseas, pertaining to the unfortunate? Probably not. There's maybe a few of them out there that will. But by and large, greed is their main force of their enterprise. And they're going to keep every stinking dime that they get rather than using that money for good purposes other than their own. Now I'm talking about where the rubber meets the road here regarding this. Some of these beings, the way that they look around here, probably looking at 60 bushel to the acre, possibly, depending upon what type of being it was, when it was planted, etc. They have been blessed tremendously, and I'm so glad that the Heavenly Father has done this, because I can see where they was lining up this year, the same as they did last year, towards all these irrigation systems that they was going to use to basically survive themselves in, that if they had to, they would have turned on every sprinkling system around here that you could have thought of, and pertaining to our aqueducts, could have cared less pertaining to people's wells drying up. I know what I know that I'm seeing proof in the pudding of. Not just in the agriculture community, but also pertaining to these governments that are now acting inappropriate in ways that I can't even believe to imagine. Why would they have announced that they have a nuclear sub standing out there in the waters? What else are they going to flub up on? We've seen them flub up on the 9/11 original attack. We've seen them flub up on who they attacked towards trying to blame it on. We've seen how they flubbed up on going to war with a country over there pretending Saddam Hussein, that's actually added more distress into that area. Instead of adding stability, they actually added instability. We've seen them go to war with the Afghanistan people, and basically after 10 years of being in there, sweat, blood, and tears, walk away, and 11 days later, the enemy takes back over the country. What else is the American military government going to do that's going to backfire in everybody's faces? That's the $1 million question here towards how far can a government go whenever it comes to them devaluating their original principles and who we are and what we are regarding the beast, the adversary overseas.
Hamas and Yahya Sinwar, its leader, for saying that they won't send representatives to those talks on Thursday, that it is Hamas that's the obstacle here.
War is an awful thing. There's nothing pretty. There's nothing elegant. There's nothing glamorous about watching people die and watching people kill one another. It never has, it never will be. Once more, the Western world over here has tried to put a new image on war policies. that we're supposed to think, oh, there's not going to be human casualties, and if it is, it's not going to be collateral damage. There's always collateral damage in any war. Major, small, big, little, whatever. And whenever we get to thinking that we're not going to have casualties that way, then we are on a different sense of reality. All these people that have stood up against the suffering and the pain, especially the lives of the innocent children over there, I truly understand. I don't like to see it no more than anybody else does. But at the same token, you have to realize that it is Israel's livelihood at stake here, because every one of those countries over there surrounding Israel wants to take Israel and annihilate them, including Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia won't say that out in the public, because we're supposed to be their allies and they're supposed to be our allies. But deep down inside, you can't tell me that certain people don't realize that whenever it comes to the way that those people have been indoctrinated over there in hate America, hate America, hate America. America is the great Satan. America is the infidels. America, kill Israel. You can't tell me that those people won't turn on the American people on a dime towards supporting their regional ideology that has been forced down their throats and brainwashed those people for the past 2,000 years. And it talks about this in the Bible, and that's one of the reasons why God said what he said pertaining to him hating those who basically worship Balak and Balaam. That goes all the way back into your original Persian Empire regarding what was going on basically about 1,000 years before Christ ever come onto the scene. It was only after Christ come onto the scene was whenever the Roman Empire over there was challenged by a little baby, by prophecy. That is basically what dismantled Rome towards it being a superpower. Now we're going to start compromising on the very values that our ancestors was willing to die and bleed for? You better watch the things that are going on right now over in the Middle East, because it can be a backfiring, horrifying event. Let's say that there was a nuclear bomb activated from either Iran, Iraq, or somebody over there crazy. And let's say it killed 500,000 people, or maybe even 1 million. Is what we're going to do towards retaliating against that group of people in basically throwing nukes on top of them towards annihilating them, is that going to be the solution to the problem? Or is that going to create more of a problem pertaining to the dominoes effect? I'm telling you right now, if a fire ever gets launched in regards towards nuclear armament, I really don't think, as strong as America is and as witty as America is, I really don't think that we're going to be able to put that fire out that could actually create a form of a holocaust on the planet. Now, that's a scary freaking thought, but that's how real that all this stuff is. That's how real it is. Pertaining to the adversary standing up. Just as the Bible talks about that in the last days, our enemy, the devil, Satan, will come down in great wrath because it, or he, knows his time is short. So he's going to try to deceive, bamboozle, brainwash. He's going to try to take as many people as he can out with him as he's going down himself. And if our leaders can't see that in America, only thing I can say is, may God have mercy on all of us.
Indications are that Prime Minister Netanyahu is still, for internal domestic reasons, sticking to that very strong position. We don't know precisely what he'll bring to the table, but it's going to grow those concerns that he is going to come with what are seen by many as additional demands that will mean the talks won't go ahead. And any narrative like that will dissuade Iran from holding back and might persuade it that it needs to take a more maximalist, less a minimalist type of response, a minimalist response that doesn't incur a response by Israel. So it's very tenuous trying to read the tea leaves at the moment, Becky.
Tough times. Ben, let me bring you in. Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets towards northern Israel overnight. From your perspective there, what's the view on the possibility at this point of some sort of serious escalation anytime soon?
Well, there is profound fear about a possible escalation, not just an escalation between Hezbollah and Israel, but a regional escalation. Now, my diplomatic sources are telling me the problem is that Hezbollah has sort of its rhetoric, it's talked itself into a corner. Now, we heard twice in the last 10 days Secretary General of Hezbollah Hassan Nasrallah saying that Hezbollah is going to respond. There is no conditional clause about it. It will respond to the killing 13 days ago of Fuad Shukr, that senior Hezbollah commander. But the problem is, if the response is too strong and Israel strikes back even stronger, then there is the very real possibility that we could be on a slippery slope to a regional war. Diplomatic sources...
It ain't no possibility to it. You are on a slippery slope, number one. Number two, you do not never admit to your enemy that you are scared or you're frightened. That is what he wants to hear. That's what your enemy desires to hear, because your enemy sees you as his enemy. And whenever you get to talking about trying to break the momentum of a superpower such as America is, that's one of the leading contaminations. That if you can plant or put a seed in people's minds that we're not going to be able to win and we're afraid and we're scared, what has that done to the morale of the American army? And whenever I talk about the American army, I'm just not talking about the army. I'm talking about all our defense systems. This is unbelievable in how far that this has gotten out of hand since the attack on Israel pertaining to Hamas. And to think that the world has sided with Hamas tells me that the world is screwed up. The world is absolutely bamboozled, deceived. And now we're going to fall in that same alignment? May God have mercy on us if we do. That's all I got to say. May God, the eternal Heavenly Father, have mercy on the people of America.
Sources say Hezbollah does not want that. Iran does not want that. Keep in mind, of course, that Iran...
This could be very well a big smokescreen in trying to convince various American authorities or various American allies that they do not want this regional war, that they do not want this, and all the whole time could be setting back plotting that as soon as this happens, that's going to be the green light to basically unleash hell upon to the people over in Israel. Now, once more, bidding that was to occur, which I hope to God that it don't, what is going to be the proper response from America? Is it going to be to engage in even more bloodshed? Because once this domino effect starts, it very well may not be put out. We are in treaded waters right now that our American officials should not have never let us off into, beginning with 9/11 23 years ago. This is all a boil that's fixing to bust, and whenever it does, that tinderbox over there may not be put out, may spread abroad all over the world.
It's a little harder for Iran to hit Israel than Hezbollah, which is just right across the border here. If you fire a drone from Iran, it takes hours to get to Israel and inevitably will be shot down. But both Lebanon and Iran have a fundamental problem. Their economies are in shambles. They really can't afford to engage in a full-scale war with Israel. Israel, even though Hezbollah, we speak a lot about its significant military capabilities, they're nothing compared to what Israel can unleash. And therefore, Hezbollah has to respond according to sort of the logic of the axis of resistance, that its credibility is on the line, but at the same time its domestic standing here in Lebanon could be seriously damaged. Keep in mind it's also a political party, has members in parliament, representatives in the government. Its political standing could be demolished if there is a full-scale war with Israel. So there's many reasons why one might think could be a full-scale regional war, but here in Lebanon there aren't many good reasons.
And in saying all that, we can do and say whatever we want to do over here pertaining to our energy, pertaining to oil, gasoline. But once them oil fields over there start getting burned up and blowed up, you will see a fluctuation of prices over here that will probably exceed any type of higher price ranging than we have ever begun to imagine. Because things is that sensitive towards running on this false narrative that has been produced by the American White House going back into the late 80s, whenever Ronald Reagan finally convinced the superpowers that the world was not going to be destroyed by a nuclear bomb. But once more, the world got cheated. And because of the resistance movement here in the Western world, we never did see a true paradigm shift pertaining to a great revival. In other words, the very person that was part of that movement in the late 80s pertaining to the Antichrist, the false prophet, the two witnesses, the opening of the seals, the four horsemen. I could go on and on and on pertaining to the Bible. If anybody knows anything about the Bible, it got dropped. It got dropped by the corporate churches over here in America. It got dropped by the politicians over here in America. And because of it, the founder of that movement has been struggling all this time towards either being possibly institutionalized, people wanting to say that he was mentally retarded or basically off his rocker, or even better than that, after 9/11, my own people right here in Weakley County tried to criminalize me like I was a potential homegrown terrorist simply because of me passing out Bible literature, charging me with falsifying files in Weakley County, Martin, Tennessee. They have bitten the hand that was trying to feed them. And because of it, I had no other choice other than to basically go underground. That's the reason why I put on the side of my truck, digging in. I had been out there in the field, being abused, being lied to and lied upon for so long of a time after my brother died in 2017 that I knew at that point in time I was defenseless. I was defenseless, and I was basically just as what the Bible had predicted was going to happen to some of his people, pertaining to us being entrenched all around by our enemies. By our enemies. Now, I'm going to take this a bit further on a personal level. Just as of about 2 months ago, there was a sale across the road over here. An individual had passed away, and the torch got handed to somebody else pertaining to the tillable acreage over here that the Hall family wound up taking advantage of towards buying. In the meantime, there was 2 different other tracts that got sold. Mr. Melvin Hill bought one of them, and another individual bought another tract. It's a smaller house. This individual's just starting out in life. Way I've been told, he's got a baby on the way. But to put things in the right perspective, it was his father that I can validate, I can prove by records up in the sheriff's office pertaining to the incident reports of me being in Cydonia, contemplating about all the stuff that went on in my life, especially contemplating on the fact that I had a brother that was on his way in an assignment towards picking me up, taking me to Dresden to pick up a bunch of chickens that got killed right there in the four corners or the crosshairs of Cydonia, Tennessee. While I'm sitting there, I see this, looks like a teenager, come out, gets on the bus, acts real kind of weird, strange looking like, but I'm just sitting there, minding my own business, didn't have no music playing loud or nothing. I'm reading the Bible, I'm praying, I'm thinking about the past pertaining to everything that went on in my life, and all of a sudden 2 sheriff's deputies pull up. And the guy across the street comes walking over, sticking his chest out, explaining to me that he didn't mind pursuing bloodshed. Well, it was this same individual that come out there talking to me that way that was part of the Sheffield bunch in regards toward trying to corner David and me up on this corner, while one come from one side of the road and another one come from another side of the road, that they was actively stalking us in pursuit and trying to start trouble. Now, to get a clear perspective about who's stalking who, it was this man's son that purchased the house down the road here, less than about, give or take, about 1,000 feet from where I live. If I was a good rock thrower, I could probably pick up a rock and throw and hit the property over there from the corner of my property over here. Now, granted, we live in the country. It's down a hill. We got trees everywhere. But this same person that bought that property comes by here revving up his motor, and I'm seeing all kinds of strange automobile activity coming on down here. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. Here I was falsely accused of me trying to stalk them, and now they have basically moved right in behind my back door here, or my front door. And the question is, who's stalking who? Because I wasn't trying to stalk that family in Cydonia. But to hear him talk, the guy that come out, sticking his chest out, I was the villain. Now, I'm going to put this in a better perspective pertaining to my own personal life, and I'm fixing to get up in a minute and show you what I've been involved in pertaining to my viewers or my supporters, providing that I have any. It's become radicalized around here to the degree, and I knew that it was a possible gamble in me coming back here, but I didn't know how much of a gamble that it was pertaining to how people had sat around and basically memorized themselves over the material that I was putting out, to the point that the whole community had turned against me. Now, I can validate this pertaining to an individual that stopped just probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that I had no earthly idea who he was. He looks like he may be at the very most 30 years old. But according to him, he had heard so much stuff about me that he was in question whether or not he wanted to even stop and help me, even though I asked him to help me take out a statue out of the back end of the trunk of my car. Whenever I get to talking about how the fish story began as an 8-inch fish, and then it went to a 12-inch fish, and then it went to a 2-foot fish, and then the next thing you know, it wound up being a whale. That's exactly what I run into whenever I come back to Northwest Tennessee in 2014. Every one of these people, I say everyone, for the most part, a great deal of these people had already made up their minds that I was an idiot, just like the guy that died, that come out here on the road, that was calling me all kinds of names, and then he winds up leaving, and 2 or 3 years later, 3 or 4 years later, he winds up dying. He's the guy that the property belonged to over here. Well, he was the guy that basically moved because of me moving here. There was another family right down the road, about 1,000 feet, maybe 1,500 feet, give or take about a couple football fields, that done the same thing. They had a nice double-wide trailer, and it wasn't but about maybe a year of me coming back here, they moved. They abandoned the trailer. Right now you got trees growing up not only in the yard, but trees growing up through the trailer. And as far as I know, you can't even see the trailer now from the road. I'm pretty sure the house, that was a good house at one time, a good trailer house, a good double-wide trailer house, is probably completely ruined. Now, what would cause people to do stuff like this? Walk away from their investments, or try to corner me up in saying that I was the bad guy, knowing that they was the bad people all along, pertaining to them being the monsters, all surrounding anti-Semitism. That, once more, it really got deep in Martin, Tennessee in 2005, whenever a bunch of idiots up there, pertaining to David Moore and his bunch, decided that they was going to charge Juby, myself, the individual talking in behind the camera right now, with falsifying files. That has strong indications of somebody having the potential of being a homegrown terrorist. The same as somebody pulling down a fire alarm, either in a school or a hospital, or the same as somebody crying fire, fire, fire in the middle of a theater and creating a panic, and now a bunch of people had a stampede and a bunch of people got hurt. I wasn't in a theater, number one. Number two, I didn't pull down a fire alarm of any sort. And number three, I was passing out Bible literature. How far are these people going to go whenever it comes to A, them not being accountable for their own actions, and B, trying to bury the individual that's been trying to help them the whole time? How far are they going to go? Well, this could very well be the answer of what we're looking at right here pertaining to the commotions going on in the Middle East. Because, like I said, once this fire gets ignited, especially whenever you're talking about bringing and advertising nuclear submarines in that district, once this fire gets started, I don't know if it can be put out. If that's not a scary thought, knowing that I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, standing with a bunch of protesters against nuclear armament at one time, if that's not a scary thought, I will kiss your tail and give you 30 minutes to draw up a crowd. Because that is a very scary thought. And whenever somebody like President Putin, which I don't agree with, I am not a sympathizer in his actions or his government, stands on national TV and says that they have been cheated. They have been cheated, which basically means they've been stolen. Something has been stolen from them. It wasn't just the Russian government that got cheated, but it was the world in general. Now, if this is the avenue that the world wants to pursue, the same as what's been pursued here in Kenton, Tennessee, Martin, Tennessee, Dresden, Tennessee, Cydonia, Tennessee, and the surrounding areas in this area, if that's the pursuit that you want to follow into, be it as it may, but do not come to my doorstep blaming me because I tried to liberate God's children. I tried to spearhead this movement that basically was mocked, made fun of, degraded, and then attacked. That I can validate and prove. Just like me making the statement pertaining to me being in Cydonia, and all of a sudden here comes 2 sheriff's departments. Whenever I make these statements, these things can be validated by records. Just like the 9 tapes that went to the White House in 1988. If I was not telling the truth about these things, I promise you somebody would have already been out here at my doorstep steering me clear about these things. But because they are true, they can't argue about what has occurred in the past pertaining to their guilt. What they didn't do that they should have done. Once this goes into another level of damage control, the only thing that I can make a gesture towards, may God have mercy on all of us. Because we ain't seen hard times. We ain't seen high gas prices. We ain't seen indifference that's going to occur. I know this, listening to my biological father, pertaining to him being in World War II, of how harsh that things become here in America, how frightening that it was whenever you have to basically restrict tires, gas, soup lines was being formed all over America in the various cities. People was having to tighten up their belts because of what was going on overseas. Whenever you see that same type of destruction in today's society, knowing that there is people that are crazy that does have nuclear warfare, I tend to wonder just exactly what it's going to be like this time pertaining to a third world war. That could have been prevented. That could have been prevented. And it wasn't because the founder of the Windmill Ministries didn't put forth his best foot. Didn't put forth his effort towards trying to warn the people and put out the advisories that God had spoken to his heart towards putting out to the people. You won't be able to come to my house and blame me for your own inadequacies. Because the fault will fall upon the feet of those that, as far as I'm concerned, needs to have some sort of tribunal court on. And as far as I'm concerned, they need to be stripped of their integrity. This government needs to go in and seize all of their property and all their assets. And we need to get the record straight. Apparently, there are certain people in America pertaining to our government officials that still don't want to get the record straight. Apparently, there's certain people right here in Northwest Tennessee that still refuses to get the record straight. Well, if you're willing to put it all on the line pertaining to a risk, and once this thing does unleash itself on the society, I just pray to God that God will have mercy on all of us. Because then is whenever the rubber meets the road. And I tend to wonder if these people aren't deliberately sabotaging the American government this way, knowing that we're at the point of no return, knowing that if they can create a diversion like this, then maybe they won't have to be held accountable to the very people that put them in charge. That they're deliberately allowing for this thing to snowball and get out of hand to create this diversion. What else am I supposed to think? You tell me. Those that know anything about my testimonies, those that know anything about my social media platform, feel free to express to me your comments on how you feel like I'm supposed to feel. Because I have put forth my best effort in the past 30 plus years by spending thousands of hours and thousands of dollars towards trying to basically bring a revival to humanity. Now you can talk your talk all you want pertaining to the courts up here in Weakley County, saying they do the things that they do for the better interest of the people. Maybe certain people. But there's other people, they could care less about their better interests. They could care less about reforming their citizens here in this area. They could care less about the evolving drug door that goes in one door and comes out to another, goes in one door and comes out the other. I had people working in high-ranking positions here in Weakley County that was trying to finish Dennis James Jackson, known as Juby, off. That began in 2005 by trying to criminalize me by me being a potential homegrown terrorist that growed from 205 to 207 up in western Kentucky, and then growed from western Kentucky from 207 to 209 out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Now you keep in mind, this material that I put out, I can validate. I can prove. Whenever you have various entities that has been fumigated into the public eye, you can basically, under the Freedom of Information Act, you can basically hunt this information down that I'm telling you about. In other words, I can prove it.
Ben, it's good to have you. And to you, Nick, and Natasha, thank you. And you can follow developments in the region in our Meanwhile in the Middle East newsletter. There is extensive coverage of the Israel-Hamas war amid fears of a wider conflict. And other news, you can access the newsletter and sign up by scanning that QR code on the bottom of your screen. Well, Russia is evacuating thousands of civilians from more areas along the Ukrainian border. It comes a week into what's been Kyiv's surprise cross-border attack into Russian territory. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the Ukrainian offensive is designed to improve Ukraine's negotiating position, and he's telling his military to, quote, squeeze out the invaders. Meantime, Russia and Ukraine blaming each other for starting a fire at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in southern Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky shared this.
Now you see what I'm saying? Look at that. Look real closely at that. That is a nuclear facility. And I'll say no more. I want to show you something here real quick. I had to start a project out here. This was basically just a day before I had to get operated on the second time, pertaining to my injury that I had going all the way back to 1979 towards me falling off a 4-story building. And I had to basically put about 27 bags of concrete right there to be able to fumigate a walkway that I know that during this past winter my son was over here and he almost busted his you-know-what because it got muddy and slick and I didn't have enough rugs down to prevent it from occurring. So I wanted to be sure that I got this project over with before I got into the condition that I didn't know that I wasn't going to be able to do it the rest of the summer, remaining summer or fall towards doing this, because I didn't know whenever I got operated on back in January and then having to be operated on again, I didn't know what my deteriorating health was going to do. And thank God I'm back on my feet now, but I'm still got stitches in my leg pertaining to me being operated on about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. But I've started another project out here that I wanted to enlighten my viewers on. First of all, I thought it was appropriate in me purchasing this statue of Michael, the protected angel, that I'm going to put out here next to the rest of the memorial display. Now, some say that that is a serpent, but I say because of the grainery in its neck that it's not meant to be a serpent, but basically a dragon. And if you'll see where Michael, St. Michael, has a sword going into the mouth of the dragon, pertaining to the protected shield. Lady let me have that. I thought it a decent price over in Dover, Tennessee, as I was going to Clarksville this last week to, I thought, take out my stitches, but she told me that she thought that I'd probably need to leave them in there for about another 10 days, which that's fine. I made other arrangements towards a group of people up here in Martin, taking them out this next Friday. Now, I know certain people in this area absolutely despise me and hate my guts because of their own inadequacies. I know this. But to get them to profess to that, or to get them to come clean on that, is a completely different matter. America Rising. I took those new flags out and put them out as I was doing this project. Saturday, I come out here. Well, first of all, I come out here about 5 days ago, and I put down some rugs and I watered it down real good. That way it keep the ground moist. And Saturday, I come out here and dug up the grass, because if you don't dig up the grass, you don't know whenever you pour the concrete if it's going to settle good. More than likely, it probably won't. So the way to encourage a better workmanship is to get rid of the grass. I finished what I needed to finish up late yesterday evening towards settling the ground, getting it level, and putting in these bars right here that are basically fiberglass bars. I don't know where my dad got them at, but they've been on the property now for probably about 30 years. And you can see the, I think he got it from a factory over here in Kenton or somewhere. These fiberglass bars that I was going to use for basically conduit. But I'm fixing to get out here momentarily and pour the concrete. That way I can put the Guardian Angel somewhere up into that area, and this military soldier right here, I'm going to move him probably over here closer to my original trailer over here that I'd been living in for about 10 years before I diverted over here to this other trailer that was basically my business trailer or my storage trailer. In other words, I'm going to come in here and refurbish this on the sides where it's broken up, refurbish it, take out these wood planks right here that is rotten, take that out, dig this out right here, refurbish it, and make it more stable. Similar towards how I refurbished this last year before I had the operation in January, which was originally scheduled for December, but because of the elements pertaining to the weather, it hindered my operation appointment of moving it up about 3 weeks. But I wanted to be sure and get this refurbished before I had that operation in January, even at the expense of putting some of this stuff that I had going on the back burner. Not only did I have to build a wheelchair ramp last year in behind the back, but I also built a wheelchair lift right here in the front. And I got a good neighbor up the road here that recently moved in that helped me to be able to weld my lift up to where I got a lift right there where the concrete blocks are that actually go up level to the bottom part of the door. During the time that I had my second operation, which was about 3 weeks ago, it must have rained every day during the time that I was having that operation. Like I said, some of the farmers around here has already complained a little bit about too much rain this year. But my yard basically went from a 2.5 inch yard to basically, in some spots, was 6 inches. Fortunately, I still have friends that cares about me. Fortunately, I've got a cousin by the name of Dwayne Davis that was with me the night that I had the encounter with Satan over in a nightclub in Martin, Tennessee, that they right now are renovating over to a warehouse. That was good enough to come out here with his bigger mower, a John Deere bigger mower, that helped me cut it back down to get it back in control. It don't take long for your yard to get completely out of control. And I just thank God that I still got people that cares enough about me that's willing to help me out in that degree. One other person I need to thank is Mr. Roger, pertaining to the Cowboy Church over here in Martin, Tennessee, because whenever I first got started on this project while David was still living, after David had died and I didn't have nobody to help me, Roger was good enough to basically give me $1,000, and he told me, Juby, the only requirement that I got a nephew that's been out of work, and if you don't mind, since you need the help, go and pick him up every morning and get him to help you. And he did. We did maintain that status for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, but because of his, I guess, drug problem or whatever problem that he was going through, that fell through. But I need to thank Mr. Roger that helped the Windmill Ministries whenever I come back here originally towards a charity involvement. Now, since all hell busted loose in our lives in 2017, they basically almost shut this project down. And that's exactly what certain people in this area wanted to do. Even though I have made gestures of that, if I was to get any money at all from the United States government pertaining to me going out west and doing what I've done and discovering the government cover-ups regarding the Waco and the Oklahoma bombing, that I would take $100,000 to give to the VFW Club in Union City, Tennessee, Obion County, and $100,000 to give in Weakley County, Tennessee, of a good gesture towards our United States military. Once more, I haven't got what I asked for, so I can't give them what I've obligated myself to give them until the government does their right thing, which I don't know that they ever will, pertaining to setting up a special fund for those that died, that perished during the Oklahoma bombing, of $5 million per person, times 168 people that died the actual day of the bombing. You know, you can sit in the wind and you can whistle Dixie all day long, but that don't mean anything's going to manifest itself from somebody talking about these things. The only thing that, once more, I can do as a poor person, because I am poor people has poor ways, is basically to make these videos explaining my story to the public. And it will be up to the younger crowd, because obviously it was the older crowd that let the ministry down originally, pertaining to the baby boomers and those that thought that this was some sort of a joke, obviously a bad joke that's now been played up on to the world. But there's still hope that the younger generation could get in behind the ministry, providing that they're not scared and providing that they truly want to see their generation succeed the way that the older generation succeeded, even though the older generation succeeded in an illegitimate way towards basically stealing from this ministry. And you can't tell me that that's not what happened, just like President Putin saying that they have been cheated or stolen from. They had been. But it wasn't just Russia and the Russian government, but it was the world in general. Now, I know that a lot of people see me out here doing what I'm doing in ways towards it being stupid or illegitimate or futile. But the thing about what I'm doing out here, first of all, is not for my self-recognition, but it is for theirs. And the fact of the matter is, if we cannot memorialize our dead, do we really expect for anybody to memorialize or utilize our deaths after we're dead and gone? If we can't show reverence to the people that have sacrificed so much, beginning with our first responders, our United States military, and then leading to all the horrible, horrible occurrences that has happened here in America pertaining to the massive gun violence. If we can't pay homage to these people that have sacrificed their lives, do we really think that anybody is going to pay homage to ours after we're dead and gone? Like I said, the things that are going on in America right now are completely out of tune. They're out of touch with our original descendants that had their policies. I got one of the flags upside down. I just put them up late yesterday afternoon. I'm going to have to change that flag out because one of them's upside down. This one over here is right on this side. But do we really expect for other people to have compassionate mercy on us if we don't have compassionate mercy on others that have bled and died for our freedoms, not just in America, but throughout the world? Think about that for a second. Whenever these people want to drive out here and judge me for my mistakes or my inadequacies, at least I'm still putting forth my best foot, even though my best foot right now, pertaining to all the injuries and all the miseries that I've went through, may not be sufficient. But at least I'm putting forth an effort towards trying to make it sufficient. I haven't heard my telephone blowing up pertaining to people volunteering towards wanting to come out here and help with the Purple Heart Memorial. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably some things online pertaining to people complimenting me over it. But the fact of the matter is, those are just words. Those are just words. I'm not looking for words. I'm looking for commitments. I'm looking for people that are real. Not phony balonies or fake people. I'm looking for people that has the same image and desires as our ancestors had, that I've got, towards seeing a better tomorrow, a better future for not just here in America, pertaining to the Western world, but pertaining to the whole world in general. And once we give up on these visions or these ideals of who they was and who we are supposed to be, then you're opening up a brand new venue, a brand new door that once God turns his back on you and he's no longer blessing you, then the ultimate is that if he's not blessing you, he is cursing you. And the curse that is befallen upon to the American land for the past 30 plus years has not been because of Dennis James Jackson, known as Shuby, but it has been because of the lack of the people that did not initiate their fortitude in a positive manner, but was more engaged in wanting to destroy the individual in behind the camera right now. Was trying to help them. I can't do everything. I'm just one person. And of course, when I program down, even my son, the last time he was here, he said, "Dad, what are you doing with all these steel beams up here?" And Dunner explained it to him over the phone, what I was doing, and what my idea was towards building an upstairs patio for our United States military, pertaining to having some sort of a veterans recovery shelter out here. But I had to explain it to him. Well, originally I was going to pour concrete, about 5 inches, maybe 6 inches of concrete up there, and use it for 2 different things. Not only was it going to be an upstairs patio, but it was also going to be an area down here for safety in case of a tornado. That's the reason why we put the steel structure up. That's the reason why my brother and I, whenever I first come back here in 2014, bought this off of Mr. Needham, pertaining to this big covert right here, and basically had to go around it and weld straps all the way around it to keep the straps together, and turned it basically into a storm shelter that once more, it's not complete, but I've actually had to get in that 3 different times since I've been back here because of not knowing of the uncertainties of the weather, of the elements that was happening around me. Since I've been operated on in January of this year, and before January, one of my biggest handicaps has been towards fighting the elements, the weather, going just as quickly of 1 degree or extreme to another. This has an effect upon people my age. I'm 63 years old. I've went through a great deal. This body has went through a great deal pertaining to pain and suffering and shock. It's 1,000 wonders that I can walk, much less work, towards getting out here trying to do something for the community. But it doesn't help my morale whenever you still have people stopping, wondering, "Man, I didn't know if I should stop here or not. I've heard so much stuff about you. I didn't know if half that stuff was correct or not." And you know, I can't put positive images in people's minds and in people's hearts that's already done accepted negative images. It's kind of like being brainwashed, bamboozled. It's kind of like trying to get people to care about you that's supposed to be on the same team pertaining to the team of Jesus Christ. The only thing that I can do is pray, be merciful, be patient, and just like you read a while ago, on my truck, on the side of the window, where they basically blowed the windows out of my camper shell in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, is digging in, getting ready for the inedible. And I tend to wonder that that's not what certain people want. They want the very worst to happen to society. That way, they will not have to give an account to the people that put these people in charge or in their positions. Now, people may think, "Well, you're over-exaggerating all this stuff, ain't you?" No, I'm not. Whenever you see this great nation that has been turned totally upside down in comparison to what it was before Ronald Reagan stepped onto the national stage versus the way that it is today, no. I'm speaking from experience, and I know there's others out there that can reverence the same thing, is the fact that our nation has lost its footing. It's lost its northern star, per se. And whenever I see the things that I see on national TV, I'm not going to lie to you. It's very concerning to me. Am I frightened? Am I scared? Not even in the least. A matter of fact, I'm actually in ways satisfied that all this has come about the way that it's come about, because now I know the true meaning of certain people that lives in this area. Now I know the true meaning of certain people that was given the authority to protect its citizens, and rather than protect its citizens, it has failed their citizens. Regrettably, I guess I do take a little bit of pleasure in seeing how that these inadequate people have done what they have done in the past 30 plus years. But at the same token, because of my love for my people and my country, it bothers me. It bothers me tremendously to sit back and see one of the greatest, strongest nations in the world be torn apart. And if we think by bringing a nuclear sub over into the Middle East is going to solve the world's problems, it just goes to show you how far out in left field that people truly are. Because if anything, rather than that being a solution to the problem, it's going to create more of the problem. And I'm pretty sure that the same people that I stood in protest with in Santa Fe, New Mexico, against nuclear armament, I'm pretty sure if they were standing right here with me right now, that they would support the things that I'm talking about. Now, there's an old saying, an ending of what I want to say today on this video, which is, you can lead a horse to the water trough, but you can't make him drink. I've tried for 30 plus years in beating a dead horse. I've tried for 30 plus years in telling people and giving them advisories and warnings of what to expect. But because I was trying to do the proper and right thing, in me being the messenger, they wanted to destroy the messenger because they didn't like the message. They didn't like the latter part of the scripture in Revelation chapter 6 verses 3 and 4 of how that they shall kill one another, and they put more emphasis upon that than they did towards peace and utopia, which has drastically put not just the American people but the world in disarray of where we are today. Once more, if this is in fact the trajectory that our defense military people want to go off into, I can't stop them. I can't persuade them. I could sit and scream and holler. I could beg. I could get on the floor and roll around and throw a tantrum. But it's not going to stop what certain people is already engaged in. The only thing that I can do is pray that God have mercy on us all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I realize a lot of this sensitive information that I put out ain't the most gratifying in the world. I wish that I was an entertainer. I wish in ways that I was a Hollywood movie star and I was trying to entertain people. But you know what? God ain't called me into this arena, into this public arena, towards being a civilian organizer or sympathizer pertaining to the Good Samaritan laws. God has not called me into this towards me being some sort of a entertainer. I take all these matters seriously. And I will continue to take these matters seriously as long as I still have breath in my lungs. Now, you can blame others for your own personal inadequacies if you want to. But the bottom line is this. The elders, the baby boomers, they have brought this into the rest of our lives, the lives of the innocent, that now others are having to consequently go through. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your prayers. And good luck to all of us. Shalom.